It's a gloomy time in real estate, so you need a little brightness to freshen things up.
Tia, you're muted, but I see we're live. Thank you very much. Well, with that, we'll call this special meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Park Commissioners to order. The meeting has been scheduled pursuant to ordinance and to prior notice. Today's March the 7th. We have with us Commissioners Linda Thomas, Molly North, myself, Jim Getz, and Susan Castellini. Commissioner Brad Lindner is in transit traveling and may be joining us shortly. Also joining us is our director, Jason Barron, as well as we have Jenny Mobley, Craig Sherman, we have Joel Gross, and Tia Brown is administering for us. And we have from our solicitor's office, Kevin Frank, joining us on the call today. So with that, our agenda today, and we just have Derek from the HR department as well. We have just 2 items on our agenda today. Both are dealing with construction issues. One relates to our Department of Natural Resources new headquarters on Ludlow Avenue, and the other relates to an issue at Alms Park. And so with that, we'll go to our first agenda item. Jason, would you like to introduce this?
So thank you very much for calling this special meeting after the last meeting where the board brought up a lot of questions that we also had about that bid. We were able to re-engage Megan Construction on the specific details of that bid. Joel Gross, vision manager of planning and design, along with our architect Chris McGee, engaged them to find out where there could be cost savings that wouldn't result in significant change to the scope of work that we were hoping for that building. They engaged in several meetings where they talked about kind of refining that scope to try to bring that project in line and ensure we got the best value we could for that renovation. In addition, we did a site visit, as you know well, with yourself and Commissioner North, where we got to tour the building and kind of look at the current conditions and talk through some of the scope. And we're very happy to bring back a proposal for a $1.39 million project, which removes about $250,000 out of that initial bid. I'm going to allow Joel to kind of talk through some of the specifics of those contract revisions and discussions, but I wanted to just first state that this is this project with Megan Construction is being done through the city's third-party agreement process, whereby the city purchasing department bids out through all of their standard procedures a company to provide these third-party services and to be the third-party contract or agreement contractor for the city. And we are one of the projects that will be initiated under that third-party agreement through the city's purchasing department. So with that, Joel, I'll leave you to kind of discuss some of the specifics from the board report and kind of our plan forward for the Ludlow former District 5 headquarters, future Department of Natural Resources and Cincinnati Parks headquarters.
Yep. Good afternoon, commissioners. Just to follow up on what Jason said, he said a lot in how he opened here. We engaged with Megan and their initial estimate was $1.65 million, not including a contingency that we asked for of $50,000. Through negotiation, we got them to drop essentially $50,000 off of their fee. They had a whole lot of contingency built into both their TPA fee, which is a minimum of 10%, and their general conditions. And we were able to shave $100,000 off those general conditions, seemingly losing not a whole lot more than 2 special provisions for permits and general special inspections. So we didn't really lose any scope and essentially are saving $251,000 off of that. We also got Megan to commit to a schedule completing this job by December 1st, which was requested by Commissioner North. So we have that in a letter in detail as well, in keeping with the TPA agreement. So, so the new request essentially is to ask for that fee of $1,398,601.16, plus an additional $51,398.84, for a total round number of $1.45 million to be funded from the sale of the Reading Road property, saving essentially $250,000 from our previous ask with no significant scope reductions. I guess let me speak to two more things inside of the bid that were significant. We saved essentially $100,000 off of the HVAC. They had their own essentially contingency because we put the fear of God in them, that we wanted to make sure that we had a clean and efficient HVAC system for our employees. So they essentially went overboard in a lot of the things that they were going to do inside of that, which are unnecessary. We're still getting a brand new duct system. So there's no potential for any of the residual pesticides that cause some of the problems that may or may not have happened with the District 5 previously. We're not conceding any quality with that reduction. It's not really a reduction in scope, more of a reduction in contingencies that the HVAC folks built in upon themselves. In further investigation, find out people were double contingencying the project. So essentially, we didn't lose any scope.
I just want to say that I really appreciate a couple of things. One, the board's due diligence in looking at this original proposal from the last meeting and asking for more details. And then two, allowing us to have this special meeting. I'm going to be the first one to step up and say, this is maybe some new director breaking in, but it was always our thought that bid was a little too high. It was always our hope to go back to them and work through that. And I had confidence in Joel and Chris and their ability to manage the project to do that. But I also was dedicated to trying to get that December 1st timeline done, and maybe didn't understand the full kind of array of options I had. When someone suggested calling a special meeting, I was like, I had no idea we could do that. But of course we can. And so I think, this is an example of, I think, this board staff relationship working out really perfect, which is we maybe got us a little bit too far ahead of ourselves. And we're super excited, not excited, but super dedicated to one goal, which was getting that deadline done, and also confident in ourselves that we could do some of the tight belt tightening. But at the same time, the board, I think, prudently came in and said, wait a second, do the belt tightening first, and we'll bend over backwards to help you guys have a special meeting once you do that. So lesson learned, and an exciting lesson for me, but we're really happy with the way this came out. I think it's a good example of why an independent board can be a really powerful thing for a department like Cincinnati Parks to have. So thank you very much for this.
Super. Thank you, Jason. We'll go ahead and open it up for specific questions or comments about this. Anybody like to add to the discussion?
Yeah, I would, Jim, since I was the one who raised a lot of concern over the cost associated with the renovation project. It's what I really wanted to see was I wanted to develop some confidence that we were getting an appropriate scope at the best price possible. That's always difficult to do or be certain about if you don't put something out for bid. Clearly the city has done its due diligence with this contractor and feels comfortable in so much as entering into this larger third-party agreement, which allows this contract to sit under that umbrella. And I think the extra time gave the staff the opportunity that was necessary to conduct all the questioning that was needed to make sure that we are getting a very good price on this project, and that the scope of the project will meet the requirements that they've set forth. I know that when we have these our regularly scheduled meetings, oftentimes staff isn't always going to be completely ready in the way that they so desire to present some of these things, but this is a very timely project. And I'm happy that we can get this kicked off now, feeling a greater level of confidence that you've gotten the right price and that we've gotten the right scope of the project. And with that, I would just say, as far as lessons learned go, to the extent you ever feel, Jason or Joel, that you need a quick special meeting because you're not quite ready for a regularly scheduled meeting, I think I speak on behalf of the commissioners by saying we're always available for that. So thanks again for the work that you've done here and for taking all the time to answer my questions along the way. And I'm excited to see this finally kicked off. I know this has been another project years in the making, and it'll be great to see the DNR group here at this facility.
You're muted, Jim.
Lost audio.
You're still muted. There you go.
There you go. Can you hear us, Linda?
Yes, I can.
Did you have any comments or questions?
Yes, I did. I just wanted to start by saying I am glad we are at this point. I appreciate Commissioners North's diligence in helping us reevaluate where we are. I understand that there was a tremendous sense of urgency in terms of timing because we are on a tight time schedule with this. And I'm glad that we were able to take the time out to go back and look at this again and basically pull out the original cost of the HVAC system from this bid and still not lose any scope. So I really appreciate that. And the time that the staff spent on getting us to this point. Given that the timing is so critical, and I understand there are provisions in the contract now to getting this done on time, what are the consequences if by some reason we don't make that timing? Are there any consequences built in to this contract?
Commissioner, I do not know what the TPA agreement has built in for liquidated damages. Being as this, I don't know how to put money to that. That's typically what you have to do when you assign liquidated damages. That is essentially a function that lives inside of purchasing. And I have not vetted that with purchasing at this point to see if we can assign. What if they're late? I'm assuming is what you're asking me.
That's
I
what
will
I'm
tell you
asking.
this, we have a guaranteed letter of completion from Megan stating that they will be done by December 1st. What are the consequences of that? Monetarily, I do not know. And if we need to vet that, I will vet that with purchasing. I feel like Jason would need to be in that meeting so that we can assign that under the TPA. I don't know how that amendment is done or written, but
My guess is
certainly
that
vet
any
that
consequences
further.
would have to do with whether there was some sort of negligence or whether there was some sort of foreseen problem. I think as anybody that's trying to get things done over the last year or so knows, some things take longer. There are supply chain issues and other things like that. I think the fact that they were willing to put in writing their commitment to that December 1st timeline, assuming we get them a purchase order, or I think it's called a DO, by the end of the month, which I know Joel had a meeting yesterday with purchasing to talk about, hypothetically, assuming this meeting goes well, what steps we need to do to make sure we hit that timeline. I think that bodes really well. From a work standpoint on our side, there's kind of a couple of a sliding scope of what are the consequences for us, which are kind of, I think, more important than, the dollars are important, but more importantly, what does it mean for our operations? This is timed really well for us in that wintertime is the slowest time for Crystal's team that'll be moving in here. They're working all year round, but it's not planting season. It's not kind of like the typical season. And so, there's a sliding scale of if they're done by the 15th of December, we're probably still good. If they're done by Christmas time, well, we might just have to be moving around Christmas. I think that there's a real good possibility that if they're going to be done sometime in January, we can probably talk to NIOSH and work with them to get a little bit of an extension. I think if that's not possible, which again, we're going to start to know some of these things over the summer into the fall as Joel and Chris are managing this project. If it was going to be even as significant as like a 4-month delay to like say March, I think Cincinnati Parks will have a contingency plan in place. It might be that we've got a lot of people working out of the boardroom up here at Parks HQ, but that's definitely something that we'll be able to put a short-term plan into place that won't see a huge significant financial burden on us or I think loss of productivity for citizens. I think if it's going to be an even longer delay than that, it would go into kind of the planting season next year. You know, that starts to become a bigger conversation. But given that they think that from April 1 to December 1, they can get this project done, I feel like it would be pretty odd if there was going to be a project that would take almost double that. So I'm hopeful that with their letter and commitment to getting done by December 1, we should be in and our ability to have a little bit of wiggle room, I think, on our side operationally. I think, you know, the burden might just be that we have to have some temporary conditions for folks, but nothing hopefully too drastic.
Thank you. Yeah, and I would just echo, everyone knows the urgency and the timetable that we're under, and I'm confident that with Joel and Derek, Joel and his staff keeping an eye on and staying on top of the project, that we should know along the way here and be able to have time ahead of time to make contingency plans. But that is a very excellent question, Linda. Susan, do you have any questions?
Well, as I went through all the details of this, there was only one thing that stood out for me, and this is a very picayune thing, and it had to do with flooring, and it had to do with the fact that if indeed they found they couldn't level it or the hole was too big or whatever, then we're going to have to pay to have that done. That was the only thing that I questioned throughout all those pages. And I'm sure it is just picayune and not to be of any concern. And again, Molly, thanks a bunch for going after this. I think we've skinned this cat.
Thank you. I assume that you read the fine detail between the third and fourth inning of the spring training game this week. No, in all seriousness, we've all said it, but Molly, this is to your benefit. I mean, to your credit that you've helped us step back and recognize this. So, and I'll say that to all of us, that's our job. And fortunately, Molly was the one that stepped up and was able to help us in this area. So thank you very much. Are there any other questions, comments on this proposal? We have been requested to approve this request. Are there any other questions or comments? If not, can I entertain a motion then to take action on this recommendation?
So moved.
Okay, there's a motion by Commissioner North and a second by Commissioner Castellini. Since we're remote today, we'll do this by roll call. Tia, I'm not sure if you're still online with us.
President Getz?
Yes.
Vice President Thomas?
Yes.
Commissioner Castellini?
Yes.
Commissioner Linder is absent. Commissioner North?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. And again, Joel, thank you for your work. And Jason, you want to head up the next question, the next issue, or go straight to Joel?
So the next issue is the repair or the construction of a new sanitary sewer that will serve the comfort station, the comfort stations at Alms Park, as well as the caretaker's house. Currently there's about both the comfort stations have been down for about 2 years, and the caretaker's house has been disconnected from the sanitary sewer, meaning that when and the caretaker's house, unfortunately, just when the toilet flushes, it's just going into the ground. It is not draining into any sort of sewer proper. And so this is something that we definitely need to get taken care of very quickly. Joel has reported on this at a couple of board meetings, but overall, this is going to be a $252,000 project, which again, we'd like to add a little bit of a contingency on, as well as a surety bond or a performance bond, because of the technical nature of this. Interestingly, when we were looking for funding sources for this, it turns out that when the board in December of 21 approved the fiscal year 23 capital budget, there was a line item for $250,000 for this exact project, to the Alms Comfort Station and for the caretaker's house, or the sewer for the Alms Comfort Station and the caretaker's house. So that's what we will propose using $250,000 for. And then for the other $50,000 in order to get us up to that, $275,000 that we think we need for this. We're going to pull $25,000 from the fiscal year 2020 capital budget, which is down to only having, so this board report doesn't have this laid out exactly as the board report that I sent around to you, but that balance is about 38,000, I believe, from memory. So that'll leave just a little bit left in that as we're trying to spin down these outstanding balances from years past. It's also important to note that this is the first time that we're tapping into the fiscal year 23 capital budget. That budget has about $2.75 million in it. And we are 8 months into the year and have not tapped into that yet. So that's a great sign. As Joel and his team have identified all of these fund line items and hanging projects and hanging project balances from years past. We're slowly spending those down as we've been looking at the project tracker that Joel presents every month. And so this is an example of us using that project tracker to find a line item that already existed for this project and was already approved as part of the capital budget and moving forward with it. That was complex about where the money's coming from, so feel free to ask me any questions you have about that, or I will hand it over to Joel to talk about the specifics of the engineering portion of it.
Mr. President. Go ahead, Jim.
Linda.
Well, before we get into the specifics of the project, I just had a question about the source of the funding. Understand that in the budget, we already had $250,000 set aside for this project, but the difference that we need, we're pulling from the FY22 budget. And I didn't know whether these numbers were right, Jason, because I didn't understand what you said. But according to the report that I'm looking at, it says that there's $298,000 and a little bit more in that account.
I just shared my screen. Are you guys looking at a Word document on my screen now?
Yes, I guess this is yours.
So I think this is an example of Joel and I working in different offices. And so I was working with Craig to identify some specific funding sources. So in the report that was shared a second ago, it showed, so again, there's several different line items. Each year we have what is so for instance, we've got the 22000 budget. We've got the 23200 budget. I mean, I might have even misspoke, so I wasn't looking at the right line item. So we've got the 232000 budget, which is what has the $250,000 of funds in it for this project that was already pre-appropriated, and that is the fiscal year 23 capital budget. And I apologize, in the fiscal year 22 capital budget, which again are the first two numbers in those line items that end in 2000, there is about $300,000 left, and we're going to use 25 of that to be the contingency for this project, which hopefully we don't even have to tap into. But if we need to, that's where those funds would come from. So we would slowly spin that one down again. And this is the first time we're even tapping into the 2023 budget at all. So.
Okay. And I'm sure there are like rules and processes that address this. But we don't have the option of just spending that all down on like the first project of the new year, so we clear out that budget? Or are those earmarked for specific projects that we can't touch?
So, Jason, I can speak to that if that's okay. Jason, I can speak to that if that's okay. That is an absolutely excellent question, Commissioner Thomas. So yeah, we're working through, in the past 12 months, we're back to like even 172, which is fiscal year 17. And the goal is to spend, there's just, a little bit of remnant money in some of those funds that we're working with finance to try to ensure that we don't owe anybody that money for an encumbered project already. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. The in progress tab that I give you guys every month that has all of the 55 active projects that have encumbrances and delivery orders in the city, we're really going to get down to about 30 of those, because there's several of them that are less than $10,000 in a fund that we don't need to be tracking anymore. It's essentially like having 40 checking accounts with $1,000 in it instead of one checking account with $40,000 in it. We just don't have to track all those line items. So you're absolutely right. The goal of the project tracker, the brain, is to identify all of those, make sure that we don't owe anybody any of those funds, and negate those line items from CFS so that stuff that we don't even have to think about or deal with anymore. And we're only dealing with the funds that are current. So absolutely right. We're trying to get from 10 of those, maybe 7 active ones at this point, back to 17 infrastructure and rehabilitation funds, to where we're only thinking about, fiscal year 23 and beyond. That is absolutely the goal. And hopefully in the next couple months, all of those very small, less significant but not finished projects, or projects that are finished, and we know we're not going to encumber or need any more money for those, reallocating those small funds back into something that's useful, so that we don't have to keep pulling from these and you only have one pot of money that you're having to deal with at any given time. So you're absolutely right. Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank
Both
you.
of these projects are perfect examples of that, which is that hopefully at the end of them, we've got $50,000 in the Ludlow DNR headquarters renovation, because we don't use the contingency. And hopefully we have $25,000 in this project because we don't use contingency. We're setting up new procedures to make sure at the end of those projects, when the last check is signed, we will pull that money back and then reuse it. And so you are right, we totally could use the 222000 project line item, which has $300,000 or so in it. I was merely suggesting, well, I guess we proposed using the 232000 line, since you had already appropriated funds in it. It kind of illustrated that these funds a lot of times are accounted for.
Okay, I think that's clear. So Craig, Joel, do you have anything to add as far as the project itself?
I do. Yes, sir. Thank you. So this project is also, in my opinion, at the very edge of what I'll call, acceptable from a budget standpoint. It's very expensive for what we're getting. Just want you all to understand that the reason that this is we pretty much mandated that we don't want them to go in and open trench this 700-foot run. It's really difficult to get to below this comfort station. So the first item on this is we are essentially spending $250,000 to reconnect 3 to 4 bathrooms that serve, Alms Park, 2 of them to the public, one of which will be accessible, that has never been before to that level. But the other one to the caretaker's house, as Jason explained. So it's a lot of money to spend to be doing that. And I want you all to know that we're conscious of that. I was totally expecting this because of 2 things. One, we made them directional drill under our trees, which essentially means they don't have to trench this. They drill 4 feet under at a run 350 feet between pits, they call them. So they'll go below the comfort station and they'll directional drill this horizontally 4 or 5 feet under the ground, which is more than sufficient to save the trees on top of it. So that negates us having to clear all of that land within our, natural resources. Saving many, many thousands of dollars in big trees that would have had to otherwise be messed up to get this in. At the midpoint of this, about 300 feet downstream, 350 feet downstream, we currently interact with MSD. And at that point, this became, from what we found and what we dye tested, these pipes have been busted for a long time. And when we dye tested this, it essentially outlet at that point right into the creek, which means basically all of the feces, all of everything out of the caretaker's house and the comfort station, when it was connected, was daylighted into, that is the definition of a combined sewer overflow. I can't stand for that as a professional engineer. That's my biggest pet peeve in life, is that right there. So we are essentially at that point putting in a new manhole so that our sanitary sewer is 100% isolated from anything MSD is doing on their own that interferes with our property, which is the case. They have their own sewer that serves a subdivision above Alms Park that runs into this and then turns and ties in at Tusculum, just upstream of where this will. We're isolating ourselves from that, and we're taking ourselves out of the equation. So none of that combined sewer will continue throughout the parklands. So this is solving a problem that's probably older than a couple of years. It's just no one has ever done the due diligence to find the root of the problem and understand that this is actually just outletting into the middle of a creek. And when we have kids and people walking these trails so close to this stuff, it's something that we need to address. And I know it's expensive, but the reason is the method in which I'm making them do this to preserve our natural resources, and the fact that we're going in to put a new structure in, which does require some clearing. Garrett DNO and the land management team have already identified with the contractors in the pre-bid walk what they will and will not be allowed to take. And the only thing they're going to be disturbing is invasive species. So killing a little bit of 2 birds with 1 stone, because we have to get that drill rig to the midpoint where that manhole needs to be set. And that's about halfway down. Then they'll directional drill on down to Tusculum without interfering with any of the trees through there. And by the time they need to access again, they can access from the street side along Tusculum. So essentially this method, while is a little bit more costly, is absolutely the right application when trenching this would be very, very detrimental to the natural resources in the park. So
Okay.
that's my spiel about why I believe we should be doing this project and recommend that we be allowed to move forward with it.
Perfect.
Well,
Thank you, Joel. And as Commissioner Castellini is just indicating, that's what makes parks different, is that we can't always take the least expensive route for things, that we keep that in mind, but we also have to preserve our greenlands, and we have to make sure that we are protecting some of those trees as well. So I get it, and I'm thankful that you are mindful of that, and that's your mindset, because that's why you're part of parks. So thank you. Any
Yes,
other
sir.
questions from commissioners specific to this request? Again, I think the timing's right while we're still closed to pursue. Timing on this, Joel, I think you told us at the last meeting, this can be accomplished by before Memorial Day, where we typically open a lot of these.
Yes, sir. We're trying to get that done. We're trying essentially, Commissioner, to get it done before all of the trees bud. So as fast as we can
Mhm.
implement this, we will, so that they're dealing with less vegetation as they're trying to access this. Sight lines are great right now. In a month, we all know they won't be. So that's exactly why, I know Ludlow was the big item on this board report and the special meeting, but this one to me was just as urgent so that we can get that moving and beat that, beat our busy season essentially.
Perfect.
So thank you all for considering that during this meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions regarding this? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve this recommendation.
So moved.
And so we'll have Commissioner Castellini's moved and Commissioner North is second. If there's no further questions, on the table is a motion to approve the recommendation for this expenditure. And Tia, will you call the roll?
Yes, President Getz,
Yes.
Vice President Thomas,
Yes,
Commissioner Castellini,
Yes,
Commissioner Linder is absent, Commissioner North.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you so much. And again, I appreciate your willingness to be online. I'm sure Commissioner Lindner, had he not been on an airplane mid delayed, he would be here too. As a reminder, that's the last thing on our agenda today. As a reminder, our next meeting is next Thursday, March the 16th. And please remind me of the time, because I think we adjusted that.
10 a.m.
10 a.m. Okay, so 10 a.m. and Commissioner Castellini, that is Eastern Standard Time, 10
That's-
a.m.
that'd be, unfortunately, that'll be 7 o'clock my time because but it's better than 5.
There you go. Thank you very much. If there's nothing else to come before us, Director, do you have anything more for us?
Thank you very much again for this special meeting. Much appreciated.
Perfect. Well, with that, I will adjourn the meeting and you all enjoy the rest of your day and we'll see everybody next week. Thank you very much.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you all.
Bye now.
Thank you.
thank you.